Welcome back to Gemini Shit with a side of coffee, where we're talking real life, real emotions, and the kind of healing that isn't always aesthetic. Today's episode is so special for me because I have my very first guest on my podcast. And honestly, this conversation is one that I know a lot of people need right now. I was spending some time over the past couple of months trying to figure out who was going to be my very first guest and what was the topic going to be. And I spent a lot of time meditating and just grounding myself and really connecting with spirit in guiding me and giving me a direction as to who was going to be my guest and kind of how I was going to work this podcast. And so I found this amazing being that I love her content. I do repost her stuff quite often. And let's talk a little bit about this because we're not going to be talking about the cute version of healing. We're going to be talking about the real side of healing, the burnout, the emotional weight, the confusion of why do I feel stuck even though I'm trying so hard. And I know a lot of us can relate to that, myself included. And then we're going to get into boundaries, emotional safety, financial stress, relationships, all of this. So if you've been feeling overwhelmed, if you've been feeling disconnected, or like you're doing the work, but something still isn't clicking, just stay with this episode. I want you to grab your coffee, sip on this, while you tune into this episode because it is going to be so moving. Okay, so today I have Carm from Girls Gotta Heal, a psychotherapist who helps women feel, heal, and actually understand what's going on beneath the surface. I loved her content so much because it's not just surface level, it's actually something that makes people pause and reflect. And as I was scrolling through Instagram, I had to take a few pause and reflect moments. So here is Carmen, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Karan Palaji. I am a registered psychotherapist qualifying in Ontario, Canada. But I have had the Girls Gotta Heal space for a number of years and have been able to connect with women all over the world. And that's an online space that I created, some years ago to really connect with other women who were going through like grief and loss and different challenges in their relationships and just wanting to better themselves. So yeah, it started off as a community, but now I am a practice owner and I am offering therapy.
That is amazing. And I feel like a lot of people that, like, especially in my community, are always trying to find methods and ways to heal. So I feel like this is a great kind of topic area that we're going to cover today. So what made you realize this work? Like, what was your calling for this?
Yeah, I had been doing child and youth work for a while, so I was a frontline worker. I was working with that population, and during that time, I was also going through my own grief and loss, having lost my dad when I was 18, and other significant family members at the time. Everything shifted. I've always been drawn to helping people and have always been like more of an observer in a space. Even as a young kid, I wanted to like learn everything about everybody and wanted to help them and be there for them. And that's my own stuff, but that's just who I am as a person as well. So I got into child and youth work, and then I just wanted to continue to expand that. I started Girls Gotta Heal, so it really opened my eyes to connecting with different women with different walks of life, going through different things, but also um, being able to connect on issues that a lot of us really go through, like relationship issues, career changes, dealing with aging parents and things like that. So that just naturally led into my therapy work.
That's kinda cool to get started. I feel like a lot of us, even with Gemini 211, it always starts with, like, healing and wanna be better and wanna, like, open up and check out and heal certain aspects of our lives that we kinda just go down this path where it just takes us, I feel like, to our calling, even in the spiritual world, like, you're just put here to do something, and I feel like that's so cool for you to figure it out at a young age that you wanted to help people, and here you are doing what you were called to do, and it's amazing. So, what is like the biggest misconception that you see with like online therapy versus actually doing work?
Do you mean like content you see on social media
Yeah.
versus like doing? Yeah. Um, that is also from my lens too, just viewing social media. Um, it's so important for me to create content that is like psychoeducational and also like community based because I think that there's a lot of things online that it's kind of misinformation or it's more on the extreme ends and it's actually can be hurtful and harmful to people. Like, even if we right now on social media, a big thing is, like, people are talking about boundaries all the time, or, like, "If your partner does this, you should leave them. If your part" like, they're thinking in extremes, right? And I think that that is it's like, it's information, yes, but again, even if it's, like, maybe, a younger person viewing that, they're gonna take that as, like, that is end all be all, and that's how it is, right? So that's how it can be harmful, but everyone has such an individual experience in life, like, why they react in certain relationships is unique to them. So reading that general statement about boundaries is maybe not gonna be all the way helpful to them. So you have to be really careful with, like, the language you're using online. Yeah.
So, like, I know at one point you were talking about, like, not right now, but, like, on some of your social media content that I was scrolling through, like, you talked about avoidant behaviors, being framed as boundaries. Can you kind of elaborate on that for me? Like, how can
Yeah,
you tell
so
the difference?
yeah, that goes in nicely to what I just talked about. Um, some people will say, "Oh, like this is my boundary," and it's actually an avoidant behavior. Um, like some people will be like, "I'm just not participating in that because like I just can't for me," and like that's my boundary. And there's such a confusion with boundary work out there because people like when they see that they think, "Okay, boundaries just reinforce a wall that I have up." Boundaries are actually meant to maintain a connection. Like, how can I respect myself and respect you and keep the connection going? But when people use this absolute language, and of course, like there's a time and place when like a hard boundary is appropriate when there's like a safety issue involved, of course. But when we're talking about day to day relations, I think we throw out that word a lot without really knowing what it actually means, which is how can I maintain a connection while respecting your experience and mine?
That's deep because even as you say that, I'm thinking, like, when I talk about my boundaries, I'm like, all I worry about is my peace of mind in the moment, and sometimes I feel like I go overboard because 'cause I'm like, "Nope, I'm protecting my space. Nope, I'm protecting my emotions," but then I feel like sometimes it goes into, like, an emotional isolation
Mhm. Yeah, for sure,
where
and,
I
like, that
yeah.
goes into, like, a little bit of avoidance, and you protecting your peace is so subjective to you, that looks different than what protecting my peace looks like. You're protecting your peace, like, it's probably, accumulation of things that you've gone through in your life that, what protecting your peace looks like is gonna be so different than mine, but, I think, like, as human beings, it's always our responsibility to communicate and like ask people what we need and like maintain the connection even though it's hard or like we feel really uncomfortable. Like it's okay to be like, "You know what? I actually can't make it to dinner. I'm just feeling like really overwhelmed with work, but I'd love to set up something in the future." It's like you don't just cut it off. Like you have a little bit of a follow-up. Like that's your part in the connection.
That's something I have to work on because I usually am just like, "I'm busy, can't do it," and then I'm like, "I don't know when I can do it," but I feel like it just depends on the situation where, again, I go back to that emotional protection. Um, so, like,
Mhm.
emotional safety, what does that actually look like in, like, a real life vision or scenario?
Yeah, emotional safety, if we're thinking of like relationships or even if we just want to get right into romantic relationships, it's really the environment, the emotional environment between you and your person and your partner. And emotional safety essentially means I can be myself and know that there's no consequences to me authentically being who I am. That I might bring up something that bothers me and I'm not going to get met with like a heavy reaction or shame or judgment. Yes, our partners are allowed to feel feelings, but again, it's like, am I able to show up as I am and know that, I can fully be myself and say what I need to say and know that we can have a healthy conversation. But with that said too, of course, like you're never going to have a partner that doesn't trigger you. Our partners always trigger and activate things in us. Um, so that's where that work comes in of like you really have to understand your experience, why you view things the way that you do and like I mean, I'm biased because I'm a therapist. I think therapy is really important. There's other therapeutic avenues too you can take to doing the work and like understanding yourself and how you show up in relationships. But that all connects to emotional safety and yeah, yeah.
I feel like when you say, like, triggers and stuff, I feel like sometimes we say triggered, but we don't even actually know what it means, you know? Like, I could just sit and say like, "Oh my god, that triggered something," but I don't even know what it triggered. It just triggered me to feel not happy maybe, when it comes to relationship. I like to look at relationships as general, right? Like, maybe your kids
Mhm.
or parents or I don't know, your boss, your coworkers, things like that. What are some triggers that you actually, like, talk about the most when it comes to women in relationships?
Yeah, and that first part about the word triggers, I also had kind of corrected myself with saying activated because triggers is a really like it's a big word and it's one of those words we hear tossed around on social media a lot or people just use it so casually. But I like to use like activated. Like it's something within you is happening, you're having a reaction. Um and yeah, so I would like to say activated. Um, but your question was what are some of the things that I see when working with people, women
Yeah,
when
like,
it comes to
what
their
are some common
relationships?
triggers that women, deal with that you see that's maybe could be common that a lot of us, because I feel like a lot of us could
Mhm.
relate to certain triggers when it comes to relationships, but we always feel alone, like, "Am I the
I
only one
think a
that's
lot of
feeling this?"
yeah, I think a lot of the things that activate us in a relationship come from wounds that we have growing up, whether it's abandonment or rejection. Those are really common ones. So anytime we might perceive our partner is going to, oh, I've really upset them and like I don't know how to deal with that. Maybe I've never had an example of like healthy conflict in relationships. I am just going to sabotage the shit out of that and I'm going to leave and I'm going to leave before they leave or I'm going to withdraw. Like people have different responses, but underneath that, it's usually a wound is activated from a really important time in your life or early part of your life.
Yeah, I feel like this hits home for me a lot just for, like, my
Yeah.
upbringing in life and different, like, relationships, even with my kids and stuff, so, like, I feel like the word "activated" is better than the word using the word "triggered," but sometimes
Yeah.
I do feel myself getting activated, and I'm like, I don't know if this is gonna go to an emotional type of activation, an anger type of activation,
Mhm.
but do you think that it's fair enough and this is speaking from my own, kind of, like, perspective, but, like, do you think it's our own responsibility to manage our activations, or should other people be adjusting to them?
That's a good question. I'm always going to say that it's your responsibility to take care of yourself. And honestly, you might say, but that's not fair. I didn't do all the things to me. Like, things have happened to me in life that I had no control over. And absolutely. And there's like a time and place to validate and honor that. But ultimately, it's your responsibility for how you show up in your relationships and the quality of your relationships. And, hopefully you have those connections in your life with like a partner or like family members that they really can appreciate and understand you, but it shouldn't be their responsibility to totally adjust and attune to you. And we want our partners and people around us to attune to us to a certain degree, but ultimately we carry that responsibility of like making the adjustment, doing a repair, and saying, you know what, like this morning was just so overwhelming for me. I know I reacted. You didn't deserve that. Sorry about that. Right? Like it's our responsibility to carry out that repair.
Yeah, I feel like it's really hard. I wanna believe that as I'm doing the work, and I feel like a lot of people could relate, like, as I'm doing the work, I wanna get that kinda, like, confirmation from other people. So I feel like I keep looking for that validation of, "Oh, you spoke different," or "Your energy was different in accepting that," or you know what I mean? Like, and I feel like that's where we get kind of, like, discouraged because we wanna get recognition of, "Oh, dang, she reacted different. She didn't get triggered like she normally did, or she didn't get, react the way that she did,"
Yeah.
and sometimes we don't get that confirmation, and that's where I feel like we go back into that, like, emotional isolation of, like, "Am I not doing it right?" Like, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Yep.
It's hard.
For sure.
Also, when I was scrolling through your Instagram, I seen, topics on money, stress, all that. So, you talked about financial stress and how it affects relationship. Why do
Mhm.
you say money is so emotionally charged?
I think we all have our own relationship with money, right? Some people might have grown up with like food insecurity, housing insecurity. Maybe they've grown out of that and they have, you know, been more financially stable as an adult. Maybe they're still struggling with it. Regardless of what it is, we all have our own relationship to money. And when we are forming connections with a romantic partner, that for sure can come up, right? Like life is really, really stressful these days, right? Like there are expenses and all of that. And I think that um there's also a piece about, like, our own personal views on gender roles and how much we think each partner should be carrying, and everybody has different roles in their relationship that work, but I think that money does come up quite a lot and, can cause a lot of stress and conflict in relationships.
I agree. I feel like there's a lot of people that get divorced over money or like split over money. And sometimes I feel like money puts people in a greedy predicament, um, depending on where they're at in life. Do you think that people sometimes maybe attach their worth to how much they make? Have you seen
Uh,
instances like that? Yeah, I
yeah,
can
and then
see
on
that.
the flip side to that too, like, when people assign, their worth to their performance or their work, and let's say that person, um gets cut from their job and they lose a job and it's really hard and they're maybe struggling for a couple months as an adult and then they're relying on their partner to really come through and to carry them a little bit financially. That in and of itself causes distress. And then you're like, well, I'm not making money and I feel worthless because I'm not making money, I'm not earning. So I think there is something to be said too about how society really frames us to assign our worth to our performance, how much we do, how much we make. And your
Yeah.
partner might have different values and that can kind of cause conflict as well.
I agree 100%. I see it a lot in doing relationship readings, with tarot and stuff where, I'm a firm believer in like you attract what you want. So I do have
Yeah.
like that certain area of clients where they attract those like financially stable relationships, whether it's friendships or dating and things like that. Um, but I don't foresee somebody in that kind of community. I don't foresee people really genuinely looking for the emotional connection. They're looking for the financial stability. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I could help you clear this out, which I don't know if that comes from like a open wound that's not healed, or I don't know if you're just wired like that. What do you think about somebody like that?
It could be, and honestly, as we grow too and we enter different phases of our life, our priorities shift, right? So, maybe for that person right now, their focus is financial stability. Maybe they've been struggling for so long, and that's what they want, or maybe that's what they grew up seeing that example, and that's what works for them right now. But I think overall, just our priorities shift, and yeah, it really depends.
I was doing research on like just relationships lately and stuff, and I feel like a lot of what I was reading was leading up to women feeling like they always have to be so strong,
Mhm.
and portray themselves as like super strong. And then I started like thinking about myself because like I'm a mom of five, and I feel like always having to portray to be strong where like my husband had like I don't know if this is just life where it's like the dad always has the money and dad makes the financial decisions, and mom has to be the strong emotional one. And I feel like sometimes we get caught up in that, like, I guess, like, the roles, like you were saying, kind of being in that, like, a role position, but then I feel like it, like, puts more stress with having to be, I don't know, like, in a role, like, I wish I could just be, like, not so emotionally connected to money or emotionally connected to, like,
Yeah.
everybody's emotions and always having to feel like I have to put out all these fires because it gets so draining, and sometimes I feel like I don't always have the right words, but do you believe that healing only happens through talking, or do you also believe that, like, you could heal through, like, rest and self-connection, energy, maybe other ways?
Yeah, absolutely. And to your first point, I think a lot of women connect with that no matter how much they do, it's never enough or it's never it's never fully valued, whether that's you being your hardest critic or putting pressure on yourself or you're feeling it from other spaces. I think women typically do carry that, where like I just no matter what I do, it's not enough, and I just had this kind of a day, and like it will never be viewed as like enough. So there's definitely a lot of women feel that, and I think the work with that is really personal, and like you have to understand like your relationship with your gender roles and validating yourself in those moments, because it's like it's years like as young little girls, like we're kind of are taught that way, right? Like keep doing more, like now you have to work, now you have to raise a family, now you have to do this, now you have to manage this and this and this. So that's really been conditioned at a really early age for most females.
Yep,
But
I
I do
agree.
think
I
that
agree.
talk therapy is even talk therapy, anything of that sort is healing. It's great, but I also think that things like you said, resting, um, other like forms of movement, even like tarot, like what you do, like that. There's different pieces that really contribute to someone's healing journey. And the beautiful thing is like there's not a correct way to start. Like someone might really delve into their healing journey and be like, I'm going to start actually with therapy. And therapy is what kind of opens the door to community. Okay, I actually, you know what? I want to join that Pilates class. I want to join that yoga class. I want to really connect with other women. And then it's like, okay, well, I really want to have a deeper understanding of myself. Maybe they get into astrology or they book a tarot appointment. Maybe they do a little bit now they want to do some soul searching. So maybe they do solo traveling. And then maybe it looks like, okay, well, actually, now I want to get into more of like my lifestyle and eating habits. So I'm really going to like eat a little bit more cleaner or change my diet. And any of those things can happen in any order and at any point in life. But I think all of them are so valuable, because we really should be tailoring our own healing experience to ourselves and what we need.
300%. I feel like that's what got me even, like, more into tarot was realizing how many people it could heal, and I don't know if you kinda grew up in the same, idea that I did where, like, tarot growing up was like, "Oh, no, you don't do that. That is so bad," like, and over the years as I've done readings and stuff, like, I found that it's been so beneficial in so many ways, to help people heal. So I feel like you're right, like, whether it's astrology, anything that you do to heal yourself, like, we all find those different methods to heal, um, because I feel like healing isn't just one way, like, we're all wired different, so I feel like whatever we feel drawn to, like, I think therapy, like talk therapy is probably the most emotional part of it, because you actually have somebody to filter back your ideas or your words to kind of get your mind going in a different direction. And I remember when I first did therapy too, it was like I thought my way was the right way. And then when you start to talk to a therapist and they bring up these points or change your perspective or give you a thought to think about, and you're like, oh, wow, okay, this is something so different, right? So I feel like we all kinda just, yeah, adventure on that kind of avenue of whatever
Yeah.
fits you.
And I was going to say, in your line of work, that might be a starting point for some people who are, maybe feel like therapy or talk therapy is a little daunting, and maybe too vulnerable. And, with whatever you share, like that might open up their eyes and their perspective to being like, oh, okay, so I actually do have to do a little bit more work. Like, yes, might unfold for me in this way, but in the in between, that's my part. That's where I have to really be showing up for myself and like putting in that energy and that time into shifting things in my life. So, yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
What's a, behavior that you think people normalize that's actually really unhealthy?
I think, honestly, like we said from the beginning, normalizing, avoidant behaviors and stamping it as, like, setting boundaries is a really big one, because it's tricky. Like, there is some validity in it being a boundary, but it's like, well, how much is that serving you in, like, your relationships?
Do you think Instagram and social media, TikTok, do you think any of the social media aspect plays a role in people's, like, relationships to either make it better or worse?
Yeah, it can. Everything is information at the end of the day, right? Like, but You have to view it really smartly. You have to do your own research and not really take everything as like 100% true, right? It's a 10-second clip or 15-second clip. Do your own research. Know that you have your own experience. So again, I think it really encourages this absolute thinking or extreme thinking that can be really harmful and plant more doubt in your mind. But in the same breath, it also could bring awareness to things you haven't really considered or thought of in that way.
Yeah, I feel like social media affects people and they don't even realize it, you know, like
Mm.
maybe like having to compare or get attention. And I feel like when it comes to relationships, like with tarot readings, I can't tell you how many tarot readings I do that people are in situationships. And I can't judge you, you know, all I can do is give you guidance and clarity. But it's crazy to see how many people are in situationships and or married and want you know, like they found through social media, found like, I don't know, their next person. And I do a lot of readings where people are like, I need to know if this relationship's gonna work. And it's
Mhm,
crazy because I feel like we go back into that, like, you're missing something maybe, and you need, I've noticed a lot of women I work with need, like, they can't be without a partner, you know?
mhm,
And I kinda guide that towards, like, the healing, like, you need to heal this portion of you. I like to just say my kind of like my famous line when I deal with the situationships is kind of like, you know, you can't bring your baggage from one relationship to the next relationship. And a lot of times the cheating, because you're in that environment, that cheating kind of mindset sets in, and I feel like it's a red flag. I don't know, like a red flag because you've been cheated on before or you're in that kind of era of cheating, like any little trigger that revolves around cheating makes that individual feel some type of way. I don't know, like, so somebody in a situationship, right? Like, how would you guide them? Obviously, you can't say like that, don't do that, right? But how would you guide them to heal, to kind of look and reflect at themselves? Like, what would be a good start point for somebody that is kind of in between two relationships?
yeah, I think you touched on so many pieces in what you were saying too. Like, you have to know your worth and know your value and know what you bring to the table, and also be okay with sitting at a table by yourself. And if you can't, that's where the work starts. It's like, well, why am I not comfortable in my own company? Why, am I jumping from relationship to relationship? How is this serving me? And if it wasn't there, how would that feel like for me? Right? Because I think sometimes we just grasp at what we can grasp because we think that's what we deserve, or maybe that's what has been normalized for us. So, really challenge yourself to think beyond what you think you deserve. Because yeah, there's definitely a lot out there, but I always say, like, my famous line is it always comes back to you, and your relationship with yourself is your greatest investment. It's the longest relationship you have, and it's really, really worth putting in the work and understanding that, because when you do put in the work, you will attract better opportunities, better connection. You kind of clear out some of the stuff that's already there, but you have to be okay with vibing along for a little bit too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like a lot of women struggle with being alone, you know, the fear of being alone. But then I look with just dealing with the readings that I do, I'm like, I would hate to be single in this era because it is so toxic. Like
Mhm.
everybody's cheating on somebody. Nobody values, you know, relationship anymore. Nobody values marriage. It's, I mean, not to say nobody, the percentages are probably very, very, very low. And I feel like that's what starts to trigger us all and put us all in a mindset of like, oh my gosh, the fear starts to kick in, you know, things like that. But I feel like we touched on a lot of good things. Is there, if you could give the people listening, um, anything very, very like, I want to say, will spark an interest, what would that look like? Or what would you say to somebody that could take one thing away from this whole message today?
I would honestly just reiterate that it all comes back. It all starts with and it all comes back to your relationship with yourself. Um, and if that's really hard for you to look at right now, for whatever reason, start by looking at who you're surrounding yourself with. And are they helping you become this better, higher version of yourself that you want to see, or are they keeping you stuck? Because I think we overlook the people and the things that are surrounding us. For some people, their environment, they can't change it, right? Like they live with who they live with, and it's hard to change their circumstances. But oftentimes, like the connections, I think those are a really important place to start. And just seeing, like, can I show up as myself in this friendship or with this family member, whoever? And if not, I think there's some exploration that should be done there.
Yeah. This is deep. I feel like it's a starting point for people. It's, a place to it's crazy because my mom would always growing up, would always say, "If you have to go to therapy, you're weak-minded. You should be able to get through this on your own," and it's like, as I became older and was able to make my own decisions and stepped into a therapy room, I feel like that was the beginning part for me,
Mhm.
of healing, of thinking different, of kind of letting go of all that baggage that I had that I never knew even I carried, which then led me to all these spiritual things and healings and meeting different people and just kind of realizing that, like, sitting at the table alone sometimes is not bad. Like, I
Yeah.
actually have a good time, going by myself and sitting and where I'm like, "Oh, I can finally get a peace of mind."
Mhm.
Finally get to sit in my own thoughts, finally get to just veg or do whatever. So I feel like this is a great starting point for people that are on the verge of healing and, maybe don't look at therapy as a healing point because they're looking at spiritual things. But I love that you brought up, being able to heal in many ways and understanding, letting people understand that there's healing in so many different ways. It doesn't just look like, a textbook type of,
Yeah.
theory for sure.
Yeah. You
Of
have to find
course.
the things that work for you.
If anybody wants to connect with you, can you let them know how to find you, where to book
Yeah.
with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Girls Gotta Heal, and my website is girlsgottaheal.com, where you can book services with me, and I offer some self-help resources as well. So you can check that out there, and also book on my website as well.
I love that. Well, thank you for being here. I loved that we kind of went down a rabbit hole for a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, this was fun, and I'm pretty sure that we will be connecting again, and I appreciate you for being on this podcast.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. I love just expanding people's thinking of healing, and we both come from two healing fields, and there's just a lot out there, right? Like there's so much that we all could be doing to be supporting our mental health, our spiritual hygiene, like personal wellness and development, and you just got to find your things and find your starting point.
For sure, I agree. Honestly, I feel like this conversation touched on so many things that people are quietly dealing with, from triggers to stress to relationships to even how we see ourselves through social media. And I think the biggest thing is realizing that just because something feels heavy doesn't mean that you're doing life wrong. Sometimes it just means you're aware, sometimes it means you're growing, and growth doesn't always feel good, but it is definitely necessary. I think what I'm taking from all of this is healing isn't just one thing. It's not just therapy, it's not just mindset, it's not just spirituality, it's all of it. And it looks different for every single person. If you're listening to this and something resonated, just take that with you. You don't have to have a fix everything at once attitude. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just start with awareness and give yourself a little bit more grace. And as always, take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and don't forget your growth is allowed to be messy. I am Gemini 211. Make sure that you guys are following me on social media. TikTok and Instagram, Gemini211. And you could always book private appointments, Gemini211.com. I love you guys and appreciate you so much.